At any one time, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of active investigations being conducted by police forces and authorities in the respective countries. Experts are often called in to consult on these cases, but some cases are so bizarre and mysterious that not even the smartest experts are able to solve them. Number 5. To Dan and Jean Dinwiddie, their daughter Dale Dinwiddie will forever be 23 years old and is remembered for being a friendly and vibrant young woman. Dale had graduated from Randolph-Macon Women's College with a degree in art history and was looking forward to enrolling herself in graduate school at the University of South Carolina. Dale had a bright future ahead of her, and everyone around her knew that she would excel at whatever she did. Unfortunately, that future and those opportunities were taken away from her one night in 1992, and her family found themselves living in a real-life horror story. September 23, 1992, would be the day that the Dinwiddies' lives changed forever. That evening, Dale attended a U2 concert in Columbia, South Carolina, with her friends, and after the concert had ended, the group headed to Jungle Jim's nightclub. The plan was to party at Jungle Jim's, but their plans for that evening would be interrupted. At around 1 a.m., Dale's friends left the bar without her, in the belief that she had already left and gotten a taxi home. But this wasn't the case. Dale was still at the bar after being separated from her friends. Dale walked around the club looking for her friends, and at around 1:15, she spoke to the bouncer working the doors. The two had a short exchange, and Dale asked if he had seen her friends, to which he replied that he had not. 15 minutes later, Dale left Jungle Jim's and headed north on Hardin Street. This would be the last time that Dale Dinwiddie was ever seen, and it wasn't until hours later that her absence was noticed. The next morning, Dan, Dale's father, poked his head around the door of Dale's bedroom to find the bed empty. It had not been slept in, and there were no signs of his daughter. Panicked, he called all of Dale's friends, who told him that they had left at around 1 a.m. and were under the impression that Dale had returned home too. With confirmation that nobody had seen his daughter since the early hours of that morning, Dan picked up the phone and called the Columbia Police Department to officially report his daughter missing. Within minutes, the Dinwiddie home was swarming with cop cars, and detectives rushed to the family's side, ready to take statements and examine Dale's room. After speaking to her friends and others at the nightclub, investigators determined that Dale had likely been kidnapped. Dale's parents and loved ones watched on as detectives began treating the case as a kidnapping, all the while hoping and praying that Dale would walk through the front door as if nothing happened. Investigators interviewed the bouncer, who was the last person to see Dale, who told them that she appeared to be in a hurry. Investigators also discovered that Dale had left her purse behind at the club, fueling the theory that she was taken against her will. Other club-goers did not report seeing or hearing anything unusual on the night that Dale disappeared, adding yet another layer of mystery to her case. There has been one person of interest in Dale's case, and that's Ronaldo Javier Rivera. Rivera is currently serving a life sentence for a homicide from 2004, and also admitted to police that he was a serial killer who took the lives of 4 women in Georgia. Unfortunately, no solid evidence has ever been found to tie Rivera to Dale's disappearance, and he remains a person of interest. The area in which Dale disappeared was busy, yet nobody saw or heard anything. In 2012, an age progression photo was created of Dale, showing what she may look like at 43 years old. Despite the renewed interest in Dale's case, there have been few leads and little progress in her case. Dale's family are desperate for answers and just want to know what happened to their bright and vibrant daughter. Dale Dinwiddie is described as a white female with light brown hair with blonde highlights, brown eyes, 5 foot and 96 pounds. Dale has dimples in her cheeks, has her ears pierced, and also has a curved, deformed finger on each hand. She also suffers from severe asthma and allergies, and relies on her inhaler and a regular twice-weekly injection. She was last seen wearing a long-sleeve olive pullover, a bright blue nylon jacket tied around her waist, faded blue jeans, and either brown boots or white Nike shoes with a blue stripe. Anyone with information is asked to contact Mark Vinson of the Columbia Police Department at 803-749-5836, quoting case number 923-1749. Number 4. 20-year-old Taylor University student Darren Dixon had a bright and promising future ahead of him. After graduating from Burris High School in Muncie, Indiana, he enrolled at Taylor University and was looking ahead to the future. Like most students, Darren needed extra money to help him get by, which led him to take a job at the Roosevelt Lodge in Yellowstone National Park in Montana. During the summer and busy seasons, Darren would travel to Yellowstone to work before heading back to Indiana when college started up again. By 1993, Darren had already worked one summer at the Roosevelt Lodge and was getting ready to work his second summer. With long summer days and good tips ahead of him, Darren had a lot to look forward to. But then his summer took a bizarre turn that nobody expected. On July 2nd, 1993, Darren walked into the Roosevelt Lodge and told them that he was quitting. He didn't tell anyone why he had quit, and that was one of the last times he was ever seen alive. On July 4th, 1993, Darren was spotted by friends in Cook County, Montana. After this, Darren simply vanished, and when he failed to make contact with his friends and family, the authorities were alerted. The authorities were baffled by Darren's disappearance. Why had he mysteriously quit his job 2 days previously? And where was he now? There was no sign of Darren, and nobody could think of any reason why he would voluntarily disappear. Days after he disappeared, his car was found abandoned at the Lamar River Canyon pullout. His personal belongings and wallet were still inside the car, and there was no indication as to where he could have gone. Darren's fishing gear was missing from the car, leading investigators to believe that Darren may have encountered trouble while out fishing, but no sign of him has ever been found. A large search of the area was conducted, but nothing was ever found. His family and friends are desperate for answers, and in his honor, a scholarship was created in his name. Darren Dixon was last seen on July 4th, 1993 in Cook County, Montana. He is described as a white male with brown hair and brown eyes, 6'1" and 170 pounds. He has a tooth mark scar on his head and a 1-inch scar on his knee. He was last seen wearing a white long-sleeved sweatshirt with blue jeans and hiking boots. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Yellowstone National Park Service at 307-344-2640 or the Wyoming Division of Criminal Investigations at 307-777-7181. Number 3. The Curse of King Tut is a legend that has continued to baffle scientists and other experts for almost 100 years now. November 26, 2022, will mark the 100th anniversary since King Tut's tomb was discovered and opened. Many believe that this tomb holds a strong curse that was unleashed when it was opened, and those who were at the site at the time were subjected to a series of unfortunate and tragic events. On November 4th, 1922, Howard Carter and his team found what they had been looking for: the entrance to the tomb of King Tut across the River Nile in Egypt. For decades, people had been fascinated with the ancient Egyptians, and many wanted to learn more about their mysterious ways of life. Finally, by 1922, archaeologist Howard Carter had received funding and set about assembling his team and traveling to Egypt. The team were immediately struck by the sweltering heat of Egypt, but this did little to deter them, and after weeks of hard work, they had finally reached the infamous tomb of King Tut. As they opened it up, they found that up until then, it had been completely undisturbed. Inside the tomb, they found paintings, religious items, cultural items, and the sarcophagus of the great pharaoh himself. Little did they know that by opening up the tomb, they had just unleashed a terrible curse. Carter and his team gathered what they needed to display in British museums, and the press quickly picked up on the story. Soon, British newspapers were filled with mysterious stories of the Curse of the Pharaohs that would inflict anyone who dared to disturb their final resting place. And it wasn't long until the first victim succumbed to this curse. Shortly after the tomb was discovered and opened, George Herbert, the man who financed the entire thing, passed away due to blood poisoning from a mosquito bite. His passing sent the British media into a frenzy, and the elusive curse had finally claimed its first victim. According to reports from the time, when Herbert took his last breath, all of the lights in Cairo went out. Herbert wouldn't be the only one to pass away, but others connected to the tomb would also have disasters happen to them. One man who had received a gift from inside the tomb had nothing but bad luck after receiving the present. His house burnt down, and when he tried to build it up again, the area was struck by large floods. Experts have never been able to get to the bottom of this bizarre curse. Many others who merely touched King Tut or helped move the body to the museums were also afflicted by this strange curse, passing away just days after they had handled his remains. Some experts have wondered whether an unknown disease or virus was to blame, and whether the opening of King Tut's tomb unleashed a disease that's not been exposed for many hundreds of years. As of 2022, King Tut's remains are back in the Valley of the Kings where they belong, held behind a glass box to ensure that his curse does not infect anyone else. Number 2. In 2007, the Kaikendals family from Washington found themselves at the receiving end of a bizarre campaign of harassment and hatred against them. It all started when Courtney Kaikendals' friends told her that they'd been receiving strange and harassing texts from her. Everyone was confused, and most especially Courtney, because she had not sent any of those texts, yet they had come from her number. Her friends brushed this off as a stupid joke, but as the days went on, it became clear to the Kaikendals that this was much more than a prank. After Courtney's friends began receiving texts, the anonymous harasser took things to the next level. They began sending texts to the entire family, threatening them and those that they knew. If that wasn't terrifying enough, they also started calling everyone from a restricted number, relaying the threats. These calls would be placed to the family's cell phones and their landlines, and these calls would come day and night, giving the family no peace. Eventually, the Kaikendals knew that they had to inform the police. However, this only angered their stalker even more. The police looked at Courtney as the main suspect since the anonymous stalker had used her number, or at least had pretended to be her to make most of the texts and calls. Courtney's phone was turned off and taken away, but still the calls continued. One day, the Kaikendals received an extremely disturbing call that sent chills down their spines. In light of the stalking, the family had upgraded their security systems, but just minutes after it had been installed and set up, the phone rang. The anonymous caller at the end of the line told the family that they knew what the code was to their new security system, and reinforced the idea that they were not safe, even with heightened security. The stalker would send them messages commenting on what they were wearing, or what the family had been talking about in the confines of their own home. One day, Andrea, the matriarch of the family, was cutting up limes when her phone buzzed. It was the anonymous stalker. In this bizarre and ominous message, they wrote, "I prefer lemons." The Kaikendals family were incredibly terrified by this point, wondering what would happen to them next. Their stalker could see and hear everything they did, sending them into a paranoid state. Just as mysteriously as the calls and texts had started, though, they stopped. Experts were never able to figure out who had been calling the Kaikendals, and nobody has been able to find out why the calls and messages stopped. Number 1. 29-year-old Tabitha Yvette Queen was described as a dedicated mother to her 3 children, who would do anything to protect them and give them the best life possible. On May 9, 2021, Tabitha called her mother, Mary Lunford, to wish her a happy Mother's Day. However, just minutes into the call, the unthinkable happened. As the mother and daughter were chatting away, the call was interrupted by a disturbance in the background. Mary quickly tried to call her daughter back, but was met with Tabitha's voicemail. Her mother's intuition kicked in and told her that something wasn't right, but Mary lived in San Antonio while Tabitha lived in Bastrop, Louisiana. Mary then began calling family members who lived close to Tabitha and asked them to check in on her and try to call her. When family members arrived at Tabitha's house days later, she was nowhere to be found and her children were found home alone. Her family knew this was not something Tabitha would have done, as she would never leave her children behind. By May 11th, Tabitha had officially been reported missing, but investigators were confronted with different accounts of what had happened in the days before Tabitha disappeared. Her children told investigators that they saw her on May 10th when she told them she was going to the grocery store. Investigators were not able to verify this story, and the only CCTV footage of Tabitha at the store was on May 9th. Her children also told investigators that shortly before their mother disappeared, she had been arguing with a man that she had loaned her car to. Tabitha and this man argued back and forth as he had returned her car in a less than ideal state, leading Tabitha to tell him that he could no longer use the car. This argument quickly turned violent before the man stormed off. Just hours after the argument occurred, investigators discovered that a van had driven by Tabitha's house and tried to force her inside. Her car was later found abandoned on West Pine Street, and CCTV footage shows a man driving the car to the location before dumping it there. Investigators are just as puzzled as Tabitha's family, but have said they do not need the FBI to get involved because they've handled it. Tabitha's family are the driving force behind keeping her case alive, and are pushing for the FBI to become involved in her disappearance. Tabitha Yvette Queen is described as a black female with black hair and brown eyes, 5'4" and 200 to 230 pounds. She has a scar on her left arm and tattoos that say legend on her chest, stars on one arm, a leaf on her left buttock, and a tattoo of masks that reads "Laugh now, cry later." She was last seen wearing a jacket with cartoon characters on it and pink pants. Anyone with information is asked to contact Chief of Police D. Reed of the Bastrop Police Department at 318-281-1322, quoting case number 2021-2497. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.